you. Well, we are going to develop what Rocco said in a very brilliant way. I have to deal with the project of God on family. Family is the center of our topic here. We say that there are two ways to deal with this subject. The first, which I am going to develop, is digging in the biblical revelation. What does our faith say about the constitution of the human family? But there is another way in which God expresses himself. It is through creation. And creation is open to everybody and to all human minds capable to discern that there is some order in this creation. So, speaking of God's project on families, should be understood as finding out what makes a discourse on families possible in a world where so many models of families have existed and continue to exist. It also implies that such a research does not demand a commitment of faith, but the use of reason and common sense. On the other hand, the Church is criticized for her doctrine and practice of marriage and family. On the other hand, she arouses incomprehension in explaining that her teaching is universal and grounded on the very nature of human being. Yet our understanding of the Word of God and human experience must enrich themselves reciprocally. Those who hold God for the creator of the human being consider the whole creation as his first manifestation, accessible to human intelligence and reason. Speaking of family should not put us in a position of apologism in a time when the very idea of a universal definition of families is no longer accepted. First point, the challenge of the family today. Until the middle of the last century, there was no doubt that a family is based on the marriage of a man and a woman who beget and educate their children. We are presently witnessing an anthropological revolution which not only allows different kinds of family structures, but also tries to legitimate them ideologically and juridically. The recent challenges to traditional views of marriage and family can be shortly mentioned. It began with civil divorce, chemical contraceptives and abortion as a right, assisted reproduction for non-married couples or women alone, surrogate pregnancy, gender ideology, and same-sex marriages. However, in many parts of the world, the intergenerational family has survived. Grouping around the paterfamilias, sons and their wives, daughters with their husbands and the children involved. These family communities are social cells bonded by solidarity, maintained by strong feelings of belonging and a traditional code of values. These kinds of families offer better resistance to ideological or political influence. The modern nuclear family, father, mother, children, appears with the Industrial Revolution and people living in large cities. In the West, many couples raise a family out of the institution of marriage. The disaffection with marriage and the increase in civil divorce has produced a growing number of single-parent families. Free cohabitation of couples can be more frequent than marriage. Adoption has been allowed to non-married couples and single persons. Same-sex couples adopting children or resorting to surrogate pregnancy or fertilization receive legal recognition. Nobody would mix into the subjective feelings of persons who are living these new forms of family life and in their research of love and their expectation of happiness. Two new elements are at stake, which call for further research. Families can be set up through artificial means of procreation, resorting to a third gamete donor, and same-sex unions are legally identified as marriage. Resorting to technological means in the process of fertilization turns void the necessary relationship of love of a man and a woman in generating a new life. Assisted reproduction, extramarital couples, surrogate pregnancy, and now the perspective of artificial uterus opens the way to a new definition of human sexuality, married life, and family. The new challenge is the extension of the institution of marriage to homosexual unions under the pretext of equality. Same-sex marriages have received now legal recognition in 29 states. Not even some legal recognition of homosexual couples would be the problem, but the reversal of the very notion of marriage and of marriage-based family. Society is implicated in such a confusion about the very notion of marriage. People who discover that they have a homosexual inclination must be protected from social discrimination. But there is no discrimination when the law refuses to confuse states or conditions which are in themselves diverse. A homosexual couple would not be discriminated against if it is excluded from the institution of marriage, defined as the legally recognized union between a man and a woman. There is no question here to idealize family. Many persons would dislike to evocate their experience with their own family, ranging from sex abuse of children, lack of affective education, poor relationship of children to both parents. It is well known that the institution of marriage has always been questioned by philosophical systems which consider binding oneself for life to another person as a contradiction to human freedom. It is presumed that freedom cannot assume lasting consequence, even though a lasting commitment is one of the givens of human existence. But in this individualistic perspective, to be free means being able to do what one wishes at any moment. So to shed previous commitment without concern for whatever harm may be caused to others. This assertion of the absolute autonomy of the will stands in contradiction to freedom understood as the ability to commit oneself to fundamental long-term choices. Now the second point, the Jewish-Christian understanding of marriage and family. This is central. Until recently, the Jewish-Christian understanding of marriage and family was basically accepted in the Western civilization, even when expressed in secular terms. From the Bible, we can enucleate the following structuring elements which belong to marriage and family. First, family is based on the marriage of a man and a woman. Second, with the scope to generate and raise children. Third, in a reciprocal, faithful self-donation. According to Genesis, the union between man and woman belongs to God's creative act. The Hebrew uses the word Adam for human being, the mensch, anthropos, while it uses the other words for male and female. At the beginning is created the human being, made male and female at God's resembling image. Immediately, male and female are made one for another in order to be fertile and prolific. They will be one flesh, so reestablishing the human fullness of Adam. In the Jewish and Christian tradition, and even Islamic, the core of marriage and family is man and woman united as procreators at the image of the Creator himself. Adultery is forbidden, protecting the wedlock as a sanctuary. The Old Testament tolerated polygamy and repudiation with remarriage, even though the paradigm of marriage was given in the union of a single man and a single woman on the basis of equality in their mutual commitment. The biblical conception of marriage is accessible to reason and human sound feeling. It may be recorded here that the study carried out by Professor Hans Küng through all world religions and philosophic systems, Weltethos christlich verstanden, and wozu Weltethos, singled out 4 ethical requirements common to most religions and world views, namely, no murder, no theft, no lie, no adultery. Christ came and dismissed repudiation and divorce, saying, from the beginning it was not so. Indeed, have you not read that he who created them from the beginning made them male and female? Therefore, a man shall leave his father and his mother and hold fast to his wife, and the two shall become one flesh. So they are no longer two, but one flesh. What therefore God has joined together, let not man separate. Last but not least, the reciprocal commitment of a man and a woman is supported in the New Testament by a new understanding of love. And the New Testament calls agape. The substantive agape was an invention of the New Testament literature. It includes also eros and philia, friendship, and reaches the fullness of humans' capacity to love by giving up their life for the other as Christ did for us. Christ does not envisage a new understanding of marriage and family. He acts as the one who brings them to their fulfillment by adding the request of faithfulness and of reciprocal permanent commitment. Christ delivers an appeal. He addresses one's freedom and helps through his grace to really live accordingly and from inside the requirements of God's project. Christ and the Christian tradition with him do not establish a new structure of marriage based on faith. So marriage in the order of creation is a monogamous union of a male and a female person, open to parenthood and supposed not to be broken arbitrarily. The core of the biblical message is that family is made of three elements: a man, a woman, a permanent commitment to mutual love, and to raise and educate the children who perpetuate the family. When these elements are given, we have a natural marriage, perfectly in accordance with God's project. The Church will consider that such a marriage contracted between two baptized persons has a sacramental dimension, which means that it enjoys Christ's grace, which enables the spouses to carry on their commitment thoroughly. Sacramental marriage is a natural marriage between two baptized persons, which reaches the fullness of meeting of natural marriage. A secular marriage of two non-baptized persons is indissoluble as well by the fact that it is a natural commitment between a man and a woman. So the teaching of the Church about marriage and family addresses all human beings as created by God and not as believers. The whole Catholic social doctrine is based on both a distinction and a connection between faith and reason, nature and grace, believer and citizen. Faith in God does not suppress the given reality. It sheds light on it. It does not create a parallel world. It investigates this world in depth. When the Church speaks of a universal law of nature inherent to creation, she implies that this law of nature is discernible through natural reason and feeling. Even persons who do not believe in God or in a created order are able to discover in themselves the law of their human nature. The social doctrine of the Church considers the family as being prior to the state, whose duty is to protect it. In the social construct, the family is the fundamental element from which society grows and reaches the ethnic group, the nation, the common community of nations. The family belongs to the created order. Once the political power disrupts the primacy of the family, it opens the way to totalitarianism. Connected with the primacy of the family is our right and duty to care for the education of children. This right is also stressed in international law. The reason for this position of the family in society is anthropological. As such, it belongs to the law of nature. In the framework of a family, the human person receives affection and loving care to develop its potentialities. A child needs the loving presence of a father and a mother. All cultures consider that the union of a couple in marriage with its promise of a new family is not just a private matter, but a concern for society. In many cultures, marriage remains an arrangement between families, without a free choice for the bride and the groom. This practice, while still widely accepted, does not take account of the dignity and equality of the man and the woman. If marriage is to lead towards a genuine interpersonal communion for the couple concerned, it seems to be possible only through the mutual and exclusive self-giving of two persons. Now I have a small point on marriage and family at law. until the middle of the last century, the Christian view on marriage and family was only challenged in some countries with a legal possibility to divorce. Living in the Roman Empire, early Christians did not demand a change in current marriage practices. Monogamy was requested by Roman law. Marriage was a contract, the manifestation of two wills to which each party could put an end. In fact, the early Christians continued to marry according to civil law. In the West, the whole institution of marriage passed to the Church only in the 12th century. In the East, the Orthodox churches even maintained Roman rules such as divorce and remarriage. A rather complicated canonical discipline of marriage was gradually settled, but these developments do not affect the core of the structure of human marriage. After the revolutions of the 18th century, marriage fell back under the jurisdiction of the state. It was decided that it was a contract, but with no reference to a natural even order. Gradually, divorce was permitted, but it was only in the last 30 years that the legal definition of marriage began to be altered in the Western world. Until recently, international law paid a strong attention to family. I just remember the International Covenant on Civil Rights of 1966. It clearly affirms that the right of men and women of marriageable age to marry and to found a family shall be recognized. It also stipulated that the family is a natural and fundamental group unit of society and is entitled to protection by society and state. So does also the European Social Charter, which considers the family as a fundamental unit of society. The American Convention on Human Rights, 1969, the African Charter on Human and People's Rights of 1981, the Asian Charter on Human Rights, all stress the central status of the family in the social order. Now, law follows practice. The evolution of legal... 2 minutes. Okay. Well, the evolution of the legal standards began in Europe in 2000 with the Nizza Charter, which says you have the right to marry, but it is not said that it is a man and a woman. So this development is the result of the increasing revolution in anthropology and the fact that individualism is now the key for the interpretation of the current legislation. For instance, the European Court of Human Rights understands all these societal changes under Article 8, which protects personal life, which protects the right to dispose in the sphere of your privacy of anything that you are interested in. It is a consequence of a cultural change. To say it in few words, in my opinion, all these changes in culture arise and disappear. We will know a cultural change in a few decades or years, I do not know. But we are facing such an extrapolation of the individual rights of the individual who decides of everything, even if he is a man or a woman. And we can understand that some people have a problem with their gender, but this does not change the core of humanity, and the core of marriage understood as a union of a man and a woman. And so the situation that we are facing, which affects also the vast question of filial relationship or filiation, and tends to provoke a new kind of humanity which nobody can grasp and control. I think the interest to ecology today, the rediscovering that there is an order, a magnificent order in creation, in the world of plants, of animals, where everything is interdependent, may have some result back on our conception of our humanity, that we are part of creation. Thank you.